What is judging? I think there's different kinds of judging. I think there's judging that is called for and judging that's uncalled for. Like judging between right and wrong, that's called for, right? You're expected to exercise your judgment. Me as a underwriter, if you go into the underwriting guidelines and you do a word search, like a Control F search for the word judge or judgment, the majority of what you'll find is the guidelines telling you to exercise your judgment. Use your best judgment when reviewing this type of documentation, blah, 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 blah. Every once in a while, though, you come across the word judgment in the guidelines that is a little bit different. And that would be the credit aspect of it. Like if somebody has a judgment against them, what is that? Well, a judgment against you is when you are found guilty in a court of law for something and the judge issues a judgment against you and you have to pay, X number of thousands of dollars in judgment. Those show up in your credit report, and that's obviously different. But when I look at people, for example, people who do things that I would not do, the temptation is to want to judge them, and that's a bad thing, or that's the kind of judgment that we're told not to exercise. When it says do not judge, right? Don't judge others. Don't be judgmental toward others. What does that mean? Well, you're looking at somebody and they're doing something, again, they're doing something that you consider to be foolish, something that you would never do yourself, whatever. And you look at them and you say, they're an idiot. If I was in their shoes, I wouldn't be doing the same thing that they did. So what exactly are you saying? You're saying that you completely understand who they are, where they come from, how they were raised, what current state of mind they're in, all this stuff, and you're basically saying that if you were in the exact same position that they're in, that you wouldn't have done the thing that they're doing. So what does that mean? That means that you're superior to them, basically. It means that you are better at living your life than they are. Which is obviously a false presumption, number one. Number two, you don't understand what their situation is. Now, I think it's very important to draw a distinction between saying, well, don't judge them, right? That's important, but you can go too far in that direction and you can start making excuses for them, right? And saying, well, they had no choice but to rob the liquor store. They had no choice but to burglarize that home. They had no choice but to do this. No. Everybody has a choice. Everybody has a choice. So, for example, you see liberals take the no judgment too far all the time, where they say, well, criminals, they just need a second chance and a third chance and a fourth chance and a fifth chance, and you just need to keep bailing them out of prison and just like throwing them back on the street until they learn their lesson at the expense of the rest of society. So they're not judging the criminals, but they're not even really discerning right from wrong. They're not even using their best judgment to judge right from wrong, or to say, yeah, it sucks that this person is a serial killer or a serial rapist or a home invader or a mass murderer or whatever they are. It really sucks that they're like that. I can't judge them in the sense that I can pretend that if I was in their shoes that I wouldn't be doing the same thing. However, what also sucks is that this person's going to need to be punished for their crimes. That sucks too. To take away punishment from somebody is a lack of common sense judgment or discernment, really. So I think it's important to draw distinctions between a bad type of judgment and the correct type of judgment. I'd say that the correct type of judgment would more be considered wisdom or discernment, where you're judging right from wrong, you're judging good from bad, and you're making a judgment as to what is the best thing to do in this situation. Do we remove this person from society? If we do, for how long? Do we give them the death penalty? Do we give them some other type of punishment? What do we do? Do we put them in a mental hospital? Do we give them psychological treatment? What do we do for this person? That's discernment and judgment, like good judgment and wisdom. And the bad type of judgment is, you're a piece of shit. You've always been a piece of shit. You've proven yourself to be a piece of shit. You are a criminal. You'll never stop being a criminal. That's just the way you are. I don't know if it's because you're, genetically inferior or you're just an evil person. That's the bad type of judgment. That's you're pretending to understand something on a level where you can't possibly understand it. I was watching a really interesting documentary. For some reason, I always watch these documentaries on these serial killers. I don't know why they are. I'm so fascinated by them. Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, BTK. What I find interesting about almost all these guys, also John Wayne Gacy, the common thread among all these guys is sexual deviance, number one. They're all sexual deviants, every single one of them. And it's their urge to have sex and control other people that usually drives them to do what they do. That's an interesting phenomenon. But they're all very different, like if you look at Jeffrey Dahmer, which is the most recent one that I watched, I think it was on Netflix. This dude, clearly major psychological problems, had serious social awkwardness. He was gay. He would go back and forth from gay bar to gay bar and pick up people. He didn't care if they were 35 years old. He didn't care if they were 14 years old. If he was attracted to them, he took them back to his apartment, drugged them, and he would either strangle them or kill them some other way, and then he would just lay down with them and snuggle with them for hours in his apartment until they started to rot, because he wanted to control another human being, and he was afraid of being left alone. He wanted someone to be with him and to never leave. And so when he would kill these people, he figured out really quickly, he's like, well, that didn't last very long. I have this dead body, and now it's starting to stink, and now it's starting to rot, and it's not giving me any feedback, and it's not a real relationship, because it's just like laying next to a rag doll. So then what he decided he was going to do was he was going to meet a guy, bring him back to his apartment, drug him, and then start drilling holes in his brain, like drilling holes in his head, and injecting muriatic acid and other types of chemicals into their brain to try to turn them into a zombie, so that they were still alive, but that they would do whatever he wanted them to do. Now, was this based in science? Did he do some research that said that if you inject muriatic acid into somebody's brain, that they'll turn them into a zombie? I don't know where he got this idea. But that's not really the point of what I'm trying to talk about. The point of what I'm trying to talk about is that people look at a guy like that and they say, well, he's just damaged goods. He's just straight up evil. He's a defective human being, and he just needs to be killed. He has no soul, and like, really the question I have to ask someone who comes to that conclusion is like, how does that happen? Like, what happened to him in his childhood that turned him into that? And, they talk about, well, his parents went through a divorce and he went a long time without seeing his mom. Yeah, you know how many hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people, where their parents go through a divorce and they go a long time without seeing one of their parents? I mean, I had that happen in my situation. I was separated from my dad for years, where my dad didn't want to have anything to do with me, or my brothers for that matter. But I didn't, I'm not, drilling holes in people's heads. So, again, you might want to look at that situation and say, well, hey, I went through the same thing Jeffrey Dahmer went through, and I came out clean on the other end, or cleaner on the other end than he did. But do I have Jeffrey Dahmer's personality? Do I have the same exact parents that he had? Do I have the same exact, psychological makeup as him? Do I have the same temptations that he had? Do I have the same influences in my life that he had? Again, I'm trying to be very careful not to make excuses for someone's crazy, awful, horrific behavior. I'm trying to say that it's not my place to judge. It's not my place to say that if my soul was in Jeffrey Dahmer's body in a Jeffrey Dahmer's exact situation, that I wouldn't have done the exact same thing. You'd like to think that you wouldn't. You would definitely like to think that you wouldn't. But you don't know. You don't know. But when it comes down to it, I do believe in free will, free choice. I think that there are situations where you are so tempted that it's not impossible to resist the temptation. I don't believe it's impossible to resist the temptation to kill someone or to rape someone or to burglarize a home or whatever it is. You pick the crime. I don't think it's impossible to resist that temptation, but I think there are situations where it's extremely difficult to resist a temptation. I mean, talk to any drug addict. Talk to someone who has been doing cocaine or crack or whatever for years, and now they're like, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm done. I'm going to stop doing this. And then somebody dangles a crack rock right in front of them. Think of how incredibly tempting that is for that person. That's how tempting it is for some of these guys to kill, or some of these guys to molest children or whatever. Again, I want to keep reiterating, because I think it's a very important point. I am not making excuses for these people. They need to be removed from society for sure, because our children, our family members are not obligated to pay the price for their sicknesses. But at the same time, to judge and to judge is to say that if I was in your exact situation, I would not have done the same thing. And the bottom line is, you don't know if that's true or not. You just like to think that that's true, but you don't know that that's true. Anyway, I'm here at my son's baseball game now. I just arrived. You guys have a wonderful weekend. Talk to you soon.